Welcome to Recogs, the show where we learn how the world's best business operators build consumer brands from sourcing to selling, brought to you by Manufactured. This is a replay of a live webinar we did on February 15th, 2024, and we're chatting about all things beauty and personal care. It's titled How to Scale Up and Stand Out in Beauty and Personal Care. Our panelists are three beauty and personal care experts. We have Odile Roujol, who is the founder of Fab Co-Creation Studio, Cristina Nuñez, who is the co-founder of True Beauty Ventures, and Vanessa Ting, the founder of CPG Growth. Thank you down to the webinar. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today for our webinar, How to Scale Up and Stand Out in Beauty and Personal Care. I'm your MC, Mike. I'm the community manager here at manufactured.com. Just to let you know, just to give you a little background on Manufactured and what Manufactured does, we're an inventory success platform for all consumer brands of all different types. What is an inventory success platform? Our goal is to help brands extend their runway by offering inventory financing and or lowering their COGS by digging into their supply chain and seeing how we can help improve their margins with either counter sourcing, looking into our manufacturing network of 700 manufacturers that we partner with. If you have either need when it comes to inventory financing or on the margin side of things, trying to lower your COGS, happy to chat. Our panelists today, we have Odile, we have Vanessa, and we have Cristina. I am so excited for this one. Odile, let me start with you. Tell us a bit about Fab Co-Creation Studio and a little bit about your background.
Yes, so I'm French. You will see my accent. Living in Los Angeles, where I met you, Mike. I created 5 years ago Fab Community, just thinking mentorship is great, but it's even better when VCs and founders meet each other and share their learnings. And 3 years ago, I founded Fab Ventures, seed stage in consumer tech, especially in fashion and beauty, like Fab, Fabulous, Fabricate. We do a check size of 250 to 1 million. We're in Fund 2. And I'm a co-investor with my dear Cristina that I saw last month in Miami in K18 here. We can talk about that. Very excited by the first exit with a merger acquisition and Unilever acquiring them. And that's pretty much an operating profile, ex-CEO of Lancôme. So I add skills to the table.
Yeah, that's so exciting. And thank you so much, Odile. It's been so great. Odile is like the best event organizer I've come across, and she is just terrific with all our events. And I'm so grateful that she invites me to them. I don't even know how or why I get the invite, but every time I always have such a blast.
Now the rest of us want to invite to be included on the list.
So much fun. Vanessa, if we can hear a bit about your background and with CPG Growth Partners.
Yes, thank you. Well, CPG Growth Partners is me. I am a solo consultant, but I operate as a fractional chief marketing officer for food, beauty, and personal care startups, all in the wellness and better for you space. My entire career has been in CPG and retail. Probably most relevant to many of the folks listening in today is I used to be a retail buyer for Target. But beyond that, I've also been a marketer and I've worked in innovation for Neutrogena, as well as a bunch of startup beauty and wellness brands and food brands as well.
Amazing. We're so delighted to have you here. And yes, I mean, I'm really excited to talk about retail buying and kind of the from that retailer's perspective, which I think hopefully will be really helpful for brands. I mean, I'm just really curious. I don't have a brand myself, but I'm super curious about it. So thank you so much for Vanessa for being here. Cristina, I know we've done a podcast episode together, but tell us about you and True Beauty Ventures.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Mike. Really excited to talk to both Odile and Vanessa. I am Cristina Nuñez, the co-founder of True Beauty Ventures. We are as in our name, with beauty in our name, we are a beauty and wellness focused emerging growth fund. We typically invest anywhere from $1 to $5 million as the first check into emerging growth brands in this sector. So obviously we're incredibly sector specialized, and that's really born out of my experience and my co-founder Rich Gerson's experience in beauty, both as investors and as operators. We have 16, I should now say 15 portfolio companies, because as Odile mentioned, we did exit K18, which was our first exit. We're super excited about that. We have 2 funds, so we're deploying out of Fund 2 right now, but we have wonderful brands. Many of them you can see behind me on my beauty shelfie over here, but they span all the categories within beauty, hair care, skincare, color cosmetics, fragrance, et cetera, and then wellness as well. So very much excited for this conversation, and thanks again for having me.
No, thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, the K18 exit, that's when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for both you, Cristina, and also for you, Odile. So yeah, that's just incredible, incredible result. That's awesome. And also heading to Unilever. Oh, okay. Well, well, we can start with K18 if you like. Now that K18, we have this one question right here. Now that K18 is exited, are you able to reveal some of the reasons reasoning behind why you invested originally? Maybe we'll start with Odile for this one.
First and foremost, the founders, because in seed stage, that matters. So Britta Cox and Sevin Saib are serial entrepreneur. They're very much obsessed by science. So we saw in the past a lot of brands with cool Instagram and social media and cool site. I think they were very obsessed by what's behind the products, and especially their mask for the hair. When you have colored hair, is pretty amazing. I think you can be obsessed with it after, and it's worth the price. So I invested for them and for the science. And then what came was the beauty influencers, and they did great retail partnership. They became global very quickly. I'm sure Cristina will come back to that. But science-based is important.
Yeah,
How about you,
absolutely.
Cristina?
I mean, for me, it was really the people, the product, and the right people, the right product, and the right time. Those factors. And Odile hit the nail on the head when it comes to product. It was incredibly differentiated, unique, groundbreaking technology that had a very demonstrable effect when people used the product. Simple to use, and it delivered. So that was, a major driving force behind how quickly people adopted and the product. And then, Odile spoke about the founders, incredible founders, but what was even more impressive for us is over a very short period of time, they really expanded their team and brought in rock star executives that executed flawlessly. And so those people were so crucial to the success of the brand. And then the right time. This was right, around the time when, science was picking up, and you've seen the infiltration of kind of the science and clinical results being a focus for the consumer within skincare, but it wasn't picking up as much in hair care yet. You had some examples. Obviously, you had Olaplex, you had Living Proof before that. So you started to see that happening in hair care. But when we invested, was right at that time where hair care was ready for kind of the science revolution. And so it was really good timing for us to invest. And obviously, the outcome was an amazing outcome for all involved. And that also requires a little bit of luck.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I wish it was disclosed in terms of the price, but I know that that's not disclosed. But that's incredible. Congratulations to you both for that. This kind of leads me into actually like my first question that I was thinking about. When we think about beauty brands, we of course I think maybe primarily first think about the brand itself and the marketing, and oh, like this is incredible. But what about like the product? What about product? And how do you think about product differentiation within like various categories within beauty and personal care? It also just seems too like a lot of the founders that maybe get funded or some of the companies that are kind of meeting up, they maybe have like a bit of a science background. K18 maybe is like one example of that as well. How do you think, Vanessa, when it comes to product differentiation, where you're kind of working with and advising and consulting with some of these brands? What to you is kind of truly innovative on the product side versus okay, this is like a great kind of marketing, more great kind of marketing story, but maybe the product actually isn't quite that original or differentiated.
Okay, I love this question because there is unfortunately a sea of sameness with products in beauty. I mean, you've got like so many, especially emerging brands that focus on making a pretty brand or a pretty package, and they think that's enough differentiation. And then when it comes down to product, they either miss the fundamentals of what a good product should be. And that also includes product differentiation. I mean, I would agree with Odile and Cristina. Science and technology plays a really important part. And of course, there are varying degrees of science and technology, right? There's like the truly proprietary technology that's taken tons of R&D, like K18 and Olaplex probably have. I assume they have. And then, of course, there is more of the ingredient differentiation, just based on maybe just the standard kind of efficacy of those ingredients that have been proven in other clinicals. And so regardless, there should be like a really strong reason to believe for why your product delivers a benefit, and it has to be demonstrable and it has to be credible. Marketing, I mean, again, there's varying degrees of how you kind of prove that stuff. But at the end of the day, like you need to deliver a product that meets a consumer's need in a new way. And it has to be a need that's important to consumers. Don't make up needs, but it has to truly be an unmet need that is a key purchase driver. And it has to, be delivered in a different way than others have.
So do you think that in order to be successful as a brand, that you actually need some type of like product differentiation, or do you think that you can still grow a large brand? We have this question here from Gemma, for example, about influencer founded brands, which not to say an influencer founded brand couldn't also have product differentiation, but they maybe they have they have an unfair advantage when it comes to distribution, right? That of course you can kind of tap into, but just in terms of like product differentiation, does there need to be something there in order to be successful?
Yeah, so there's a few things in your question. I mean, founder-led brands, that's brand differentiation most of the time. They should also have good product differentiation as well. Okay. But sometimes product differentiation can also be more than just science or technology or ingredients. It can also be, first to market with a certain point of view. I'll use maybe Glow Recipe as an example of this. Maybe the ingredients they used were not novel, niacinamide, hyaluronic acid, retinol, but the way in which they served it up was very unique. It was fruit forward. It was all about glowing skin. It was very luscious, kind of experiential formulations. And that package of that product differentiation was kind of first to market, or they were among the first to market. And that's what created their product differentiation. Sure, there have been fast followers since, but, I think being among the first to mindshare on a certain point of view for product differentiation and product positioning is important.
Odile, how do you think about this? Oh, sorry, Cristina, go for it. Go
no, I would love to add to what Vanessa said, and I love that you mentioned Glow Recipe, because people, when you're looking for product differentiation, I get, I don't know how many pitch decks per week, and everybody's always trying to pinpoint, oh, this is the white space. We're here and everybody else is over here and we're on our own, because they think you have to demonstrate that there's a wide open playing field and you're the only one playing in it. That could be important because, it could very well be an unmet need that nobody has addressed, and there's an addressable market for it. But for me, it's also about how are you creating consumer product obsession? And that obsession can come from the product itself with the ingredients and the efficacy and the results, a la K18, but it could also come from what, and Vanessa mentioned Glow Recipe, the uniqueness of the experience, everything from the branding to the packaging to the sensorial nature of, the formulas to the way that they connect with their community is so different, so authentic. And it causes people to become true, loyalists and to become obsessed with the product. And that branding magic, is not necessarily anchored to the product differentiation. Although they might have been one of the first to kind of put fruit forward in their ingredients, there are plenty of other brands that have fruits in their ingredients and that use scientific ingredients as well, but nobody does it in the way that Glow Recipe does.
I totally agree with what Cristina and Vanessa have said. I will just add something on the community that you mentioned, Cristina. is that you need a product that normally in blind test is better than a benchmark. Exactly like you said, Cristina, when founders say, oh, I can't compare myself to anyone because they're here, I'm here, that's not a good sign. So basically, normally your product is better than the others. And the second thing is powered by our experts. K18, for instance, we didn't mention it, but it was the hairstylist. They were doing a huge roadshow to convince the salon and the hairstylist. It can be a dermatologist, it can be estheticians, it can be people that know very much the curly hair, whoever, but very good at what they do. And I've got the feeling that the differentiation comes by the product and the community and the powered by the experts.
Do you, to that point, Odile, do you think that like it seems like there's a bit of a maybe a shift? Well, I'll say a shift. In that a lot of in that, you know, some of the brands that are coming up, it seems like science back, for example, has become like a pretty interesting kind of trend that that has appeared over the past few years, and that it seems like at least some of the brands that I've been around, they want to say like, you know, or not even want to say they have experience either from from that background themselves, or they have a co-founder or advisor that kind of has that experience. Are you seeing that like these are the type of brands that right now that that can actually kind of display that that are the ones that are actually
yes
like
and
growing,
no,
or
because
okay.
I'm sure you're fully aware of the greenwashing or clean beauty greenwashing a few years ago. I think science-based, it's the same. It's exactly what we try to convince the attendees is the reason, the proof that it works, the reason to believe you. Because if there is an exit one day, normally it should be your corporations, whether Shiseido, Lauder, L'Oreal, Procter, whoever, that will purchase the brand for the data and the knowledge of the customers, but also with great products. If the products are not delivering and the science behind is not that really existing, that's not exactly what is exciting for corporations. I'm pretty sure K18, they did their due diligence on the bioscience part and the biotech part for real, in fact.
Yeah, that's a great point. Oh, sorry. Go for
No,
it.
just
Go
to
for it,
add,
Cristina.
I fully agree with Odile. I mean, there tends to be these trends and, you know, movements, and investors can kind of fall into this herd mentality. For a while it was clean beauty. Now everything's about science and aesthetic treatments and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, the product does have to speak for itself and has to be efficacious. And sometimes brands will use the science to try to demonstrate that. But you can't forget that you're also building a brand. You're also building something that people, you know, can connect to, that can stand the test of time, more so than just the scientific results. And that does take a lot more effort than just the technology and R&D. That takes having, you know, the right people around, right, you know, executives on the team that know how to brand build, that can, you know, access community across multiple channels, that know how to present the brand in a way that resonates with consumers. In the case of K18, they took really difficult to understand science and consumerized it in a way that is digestible so that people can really understand what's going on, and they would fall in love with all the other brand attributes in addition to the science. That's really hard to do. And I do think, you know, strategics value the brand building part of it as much as they value the science. And there's plenty of examples of brands that have traded, you know, for very high valuations that weren't about the science necessarily. You have, you know, Aesop was obviously a big deal that happened, you know, not too long ago. Most recently, you have DS and Durga on the fragrance side. Like some of these brands have built something very special and magical with, you know, using the broader brand platform and halo to capture consumers in a different way outside of just the product.
Yeah, I think that those are really great points. I mean, I think also you, in some ways, have to be careful about the science too, like in your marketing and in your positioning, and not kind of misleading consumers. I mean, I was talking to an investment banker the other day, for example, and she said that how one strategic, they literally, of all the brands that they are kind of coming up and emerging, they literally have like a file. They have like a file of like the last 5 years of all of the marketing campaigns, and making sure, and if any of their marketing campaigns are like misleading or it's not actually doing what the product says it does, like they're out. They're not even
I know
gonna
who that
touch you.
strategic is, and it's true.
Yeah. Vanessa, I love listening to your podcast episodes, and one of the things that I thought was a really kind of a really interesting thing that I love to like dive into is obviously, it gets said all the time. You have to know your customers, you have to know your audience, you have to know your demographics. But founders don't really. But you said that founders don't really understand, or maybe that don't dive into the data as much in terms of the actual psychographics of their customer. Can you talk a little bit about what psychographics actually are, and maybe also at what level when it comes to stage, like maybe if you have like a certain amount of sales, we can actually start diving into that data where it actually maybe you can actually learn and kind of create like an actual strategy around it?
Sure, yeah. I'll start by saying that, it's a misnomer that data and consumer insights cost money. Sure, they do, but there are so many scrappy ways in which to do it. Like, I don't know if it's a foil or like some like way of, people trying to avoid doing the hard work. But, you can stand in stores and talk to consumers. You can talk to friends and family. I mean, there's so many ways in which to get real, true consumer insights. And those insights in standing around talking to people oftentimes gives you insight into their psychographics. So for anyone who doesn't know what psychographics are, this is, going beyond just the demographics of your target consumer. It's going beyond, gender, age, and education and income. It is understanding their attitudes, their behaviors, their lifestyle, what motivates them, their pain points. It's really understanding that richness, almost to the point that you could envision who this person is. We all have someone in our life that kind of like can represent a certain target audience out there. And so being able to paint that picture in your head, basically a persona, is really helpful in everything you do, when building a startup and growing it, everything from product development to marketing and communications to the list goes on. But yeah, that is what I generally mean by psychographics and why it's important. I'll also note that, and I'm curious what Odile and Cristina have seen. I get so many early stage investor decks where they just show who the demographic is, and there's like such a disconnect between the solution that they're offering and their brand positioning and the target consumer, mostly because they're only just focused on demographics, or maybe at best Gen Z, and they kind of leave it at that. So there's richness that I think in figuring this out that actually lends to a much more differentiated brand, a brand with a lot of meat and attributes and intention. Like there's just so much more richness to that brand that gives you a bigger platform for a long-term viable big brand.
Yeah. Well, let's also hear go for Odile. Go.
Yeah, I will say again, some of the global brands of the big corporations are blind. So coming back to what you said, Vanessa, they want some information and insights. And most of the time it's linked to the community and audience. For example, I just give the example, I invested in Good Light World. They're about gender fluidity and gender inclusivity. I said to them, did you track that figure? Because if your target, you don't know how to answer, it's great to have a storytelling, but if it's only male purchasing you or woman and not people defining themselves beyond binary, that doesn't work. So they did it. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people, including Ulta, that have them now in stores, are excited by understanding better how they can be allies. Same for Bubble. She was not just about Gen Z and teen skincare and acne. She was investing in platforms like Geneva and talking about mental health for teens during the COVID. And she was part of a bigger story than that. And that comes back to what Vanessa is explaining about the interest and not just location, revenues, age, which is not as much as exciting for who one day will be super excited to have the community and the customers. The data again.
No, that's great. That's great, Odile. Thank you.
Mike, I realize I didn't answer the second part of your question, which is like, the expense or at what point. I mean, again, like it could be really cheap, so you don't have to spend much money on it. But like honestly, at every stage of growth, you should be up leveling, your investment in research. Again, it could just be an investment in time when you're early on, but as you start growing, larger and larger, it's helpful to know, awareness and usage and tracking and routinely doing concept tests to validate product ideas before you spend the money to, to create them. So, yes, the cost can start to scale, but like you can get to a $20 million business doing really just guerrilla style consumer insights and research work.
Yeah, I'll just add two things. I love that. I love the scrappiness. You said just go talk to people in store. We have founders who spend so much time in store doing that exact same thing. And it's amazing what you can pick up. But so two things I often see. One is where you have a brand whose positioning and product, there's a very strong dissonance between their positioning and their product and their target consumer. It's just a miss. And maybe they just got sales because, it happened, but at the end of the day, it doesn't jive with what they're selling with that target consumer. Then sometimes I see brands that try to be for everyone, and it's really challenging. You can't be for everyone. There are specific, whether it's demographics or psychographics, people that will gravitate towards your brand because you're solving a specific need, a need that they have. And it's just hard to try to go after every single demographic and speak to everybody at the same time for all their needs. It doesn't work out that way. So I see that happening a lot. So spending time, especially when your brand is still small, to make sure that you have that right product market fit and that, your positioning, your branding, your storytelling, all of that makes sense with that North Star of your consumer. It's so critical to get that right first. Because then, when you go to a retailer, you have to pitch to that retailer, oh, here's who I'm going to bring into your stores that might be a net new customer to your store. And I'm not going to be cannibalizing with other people, because I have this very, clear target demo that I'm going to be, bringing to you. It's always a great thing to tell a retailer if you know that information.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, yeah, those are all great points. I mean, thinking about retail, I know it's, never quite up to the brand. Of course, it's kind of like the retailer is obviously it's discretion in terms of like, I mean, obviously the brand has to accept, but like, making offers for PO and to have you in store. The retailer have, more leverage there because brands are kind of chasing you in retailers. But thinking about this question about excuse me, demographics, psychographics, you're a D2C brand, and you want to go into wholesale. You first of all, like when do you think like the timing is right to even think about wholesale? But secondly, how do you think about the different wholesalers, like a Sephora, like a Target, for example? How should you be thinking about different retailers differently, and in terms of where is a good starting point for your brand based off of the kind of demographics that you're currently serving or your type of customer?
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay, so,
maybe Vanessa, I'll start with you because
sorry, just to jump in. I'm like, I love this question.
Perfect.
I love this question because mostly like, when I was a buyer, I was constantly frustrated by like the misalignment of channel strategy and just like the confusion that invariably vendors would have when they would be presenting to me. There is a right order to this. And maybe I'm old school. I mean, I've been in this industry for 25 years, so maybe I'm old school, but there is a right way in which to grow your distribution, even if you are DTC first. If you think about a trend curve, right, a typical bell curve, and if you think about all the different retailers, beauty retailers that exist, you can plot them along this trend curve. This trend curve basically represents how these retailers bring in early adoption. The retailers that are further along in the trend curve are typically a little risk averse, Target, a little bit risk averse, and will want to see proven traction beforehand. And generally that's the role of early adopter retailers as well. Early adopters might be Credo, for example. In addition to that trend curve sometimes also kind of aligns with just like the kind of the premium, masstige, mass kind of way you plot retailers. And you also kind of want to launch that way too, right? You kind of want to start high and work your way down. Part of that is to avoid channel conflict, just confusing consumers, but also aligning with your consumer. Again, like you can also map every brand to where they fall along this trend curve as well. So it's a lot of curves, a lot of bell curves, but in short, like, this is a very simplistic way of thinking about it, but I think it's an easy way to think about it. Like you kind of want to, launch, and grow your distribution kind of according to that model, because it kind of aligns with consumer adoption, it aligns with the risk aversion or risk tolerance of retailers, and it allows you to build sales traction learn and adjust before you scale, right? Nail it before you scale it. So those are my thoughts. And of course, keen to hear Odile and Cristina, because you guys have seen probably far more than I have in this realm.
Yeah, I could jump in. I mean, to answer a part of your question too, I think you said, when do you know you're ready for retail, and how you approach it. I love the idea of the curves, and we have seen multiple different paths to get to retail. We have seen a brand's launch be at retail. That's very unique. That doesn't happen very often. And one brand in our portfolio, that's how they launched. They launched in all-door exclusive North America with Sephora right out the gate. Now, this was the second time beauty founder. This is Wendy Zomner, who founded Urban Decay. And this was her second brand now called Cali Ray. And that's how she launched. But not everyone, doesn't work for everyone, clearly. What I would say is, you're ready to go into retail when you've nailed the part around the product positioning and the product market fit, the way we talked about a few minutes ago, where you actually know you have the right product for the right audience, and you have been able to demonstrate momentum that gets a retailer like Sephora and Ulta excited. Oftentimes, they'll be inbounding you if they notice that you have that momentum and traction. They're not inbounding you. I would say demonstrate that before you reach out. You mentioned, Vanessa, a brand retailer like Credo. That's a great brand building partner for a small indie brand to launch before they would take their brand potentially to a Sephora or an Ulta, and they would definitely work out some of those kinks, before you launch a retailer, that are crucial to get out before you launch a massive anchor partner like a Sephora or an Ulta. But ultimately, you have to have that momentum leading into a launch, because what I think people misinterpret is that launching at Sephora or Ulta is success. That's not the case. It's launching is success in that you've beat out a lot of people to get there because it's fiercely competitive, but then to scale is truly success. And then to scale at that point means you have to have the right people, you have to have the right capital and funding potentially. That might be the time you go out and you raise money because you're launching a big retailer and you need the resources behind you to meet the demands of Sephora or Ulta, because it's very expensive. And you as the brand have to create that demand. The retailer is not going to do it for you. They're going to give you great placement and support, but ultimately it comes down to the brand.
Totally agree. So I will just add in short, because a lot have been said. It's so costly to be at a big retailer. Never forget it. It's like, first, you share the product margin. Second, you don't have the data. You're blind. And you will be blind if one day you've got an exit on that part of your business. And third, they will ask you a lot of things: affordable SKUs, bundles, spending in sampling, beauty associates, training, trade marketing. So the more you begin by what I would call niche or small retailers, it can be Goop, Violet Grey, the Detox Market, Credo that has been mentioned, 13 Lune. I'm a big fan because I'm an investor, but different people that help you first to be sure that you can ship and you learn how to work with them. And at the same time, continuing to build your other leg, which is your online business, where you've got the data and the insights that we were mentioning before. Because if you've got too many people as retailers, and you've got more than 70%, as I've seen that in some decks with the retailer and wholesales, why will a corporation purchase your brand one day? I'm not sure, because they need the insights again.
Yeah. And simply put, as a buyer, I'm looking at brands that have established some amount of brand awareness, right? Again, depending on what type of retailer you're buying for, you have different, again, kind of hurdles for brand awareness, but that's really important. Brand awareness is so hard to achieve. So there needs to have been some concerted effort to build that brand awareness in advance, or you have a lot of money in which to build that awareness very quickly, which is, another approach as well. But in addition to that brand awareness, you also want to be sure that those brands have already consumer demand. So whether they have already built a community and can show that there is a nice life cycle of, customers, they come back, velocities are good. Those are all indicators of readiness for a retailer to bring a brand in.
Yeah. I mean, those are all, excellent points. I think that, when you see brands maybe launch nationally, for example, out of the gate, it's it's amazing in the press, and obviously it's incredible for the brand, but in terms of like what that means in terms of work wise, you have to make sure that all your products are being merchandised correctly, right? Across those stores, and actually pay attention to it, because that's only the beginning. Getting in the store is like the first step. You want to make sure that the retailer is gonna keep buying and buying and buying and getting and wanting more of your product in store. And so also kind of like knowing that, not to say there's been a lot of successful brands that have done it that way, but just knowing that it's also work from that side of it. It does not mean that you're done once you get that like first PO. It's actually only the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. And Cristina made
It's
a
about the
great
sell
point.
in. It's all about the sell through.
Exactly. And another point, Cristina, that you made that was really good, worth mentioning again, is supply chain and inventory control. You got to be able to get that stuff to stores, because you can have a great selling product, but if you're not physically in stores because you can't execute your supply chain, I'm not interested as a retailer. You know,
I mean,
I need to
if
sell
you're
more.
on if you're on DTC only and you happen to miss a product launch, oh shoot, we missed it. Okay. Well, when you're in store, you'll have an empty shelf there. You can't do that. And you have to have the processes, the procedures, the people. And oftentimes small brands love investing in the front end because it's exciting, and they forget about the back end that needs to be able to support when you have this massive opportunity like launching in retail. And when that opportunity comes, it sucks if you're not ready for it, because who knows when you'll be able to get that again. So you always want to think about being prepared and buttoned up and having your house in order whenever you're starting retail conversations.
Yeah, 100%. You have to kind of be prepared on the supply chain side and manufacturing side when it comes to actually doing a retail launch. Which quick plug, manufacturer could be helpful for you all from that standpoint if you are a brand. But
Serve that one up nicely.
Yeah, thank you.
On a
Appreciate
platter.
that, Cristina. So what type of, let's say you're into smaller stores or like a few set of stores. Like we have this one question around a Credo. Once you kind of start, if you start off that way and going into a few select stores, what type of data would you be looking to tweak your positioning once you launch a Credo before kind of going into a Sephora? What are you kind of looking out for that really could like help your brand that you're kind of trying to pay attention to in terms of making tweaks?
Well, I think the most obvious, especially if you are if you have her in a smaller retail like Credo, is probably the first time you're getting sell-through data. So it's the first time you're being, reported in a retail environment what your sell-through is per SKU, and tracking that on a monthly basis, tracking it year over year if you already have a year's worth of information to know what's working, what's not working. Did I think a hero that I put all my marketing behind because I thought it was a hero, is that actually my hero? Or is it this standout product that all of a sudden everybody's gravitating towards because it actually works perfectly for this consumer need or this consumer that shops Credo? And you just start to learn from that information where you can start to refine, okay, wow, I may have something interesting here. Or shoot, this hero, as I launched Nuñez, only the Nuñez sells and my hero sales start to decline in store because I'm not always supporting those heroes in addition to my Nuñez. That's a trap that I think small brands could fall into at times, because guess what? The retailer always wants Nuñez. They want that, and they're not taking the inventory risk, right? They're they just want that new thing that could potentially drive new purchases. And it's up to the brand to recognize what's the right cadence for Nuñez versus supporting their existing SKUs and how to not proliferate their assortment. So there's a lot of learnings from the sell-through data that if this is your first time in retail, you're going to be able to see. And then if you're on their .com as well, it'll be interesting to see the differences between in-store and online. What sells, what doesn't. Obviously, it could be based on the footprint of the retail stores, but there's a lot of good insights. I mean, we love sell-through data. We spend a lot of time with our brands on it. So I'll let others chime in.
Yeah, I have nothing really to add other than yes, like sell-through data is gold. Like that is your currency for figuring out how to optimize things and where to even begin analyzing, where the optimizations need to happen. So 100%.
I would just add to that maybe what are your top SKUs, iconic products, your pillars year after year, even if you've got new products, extensions, that will be the brand in a way. And most of the time when I meet founders, they're so much in the development of their products, and they're so proud of their new products, they forget why people love them. K18, it was the mask, even if they had shampoo and great other products, and they took care of the pillars, iconic products, in sales through too.
Yeah, and making sure that on your, hero products that you're never sold out of them. And as you're kind of expanding your different SKUs. I mean, think about SKU assortment. When does it actually even make sense to enter potentially like a new category, launch new SKUs? How many also SKUs? I know I'm asking like a couple questions each time I'm on the mic, but how many SKUs also does it make sense to even launch at retail?
I answer.
Go
So
for it.
I think the rule is the rule of 20%, 80%. 20% of your SKUs are doing 80% of revenues. Forget the other ones, except for the shelves and the merchandising, but you need to be obsessed by your top SKUs.
Productivity is everything. That's what a retailer is going to want to see. They're going to want to see velocity. So anything that you put on the shelf has to work hard for you. So to Odile's point, you may have 10 SKUs, but the reality is a handful of them drive the majority of your revenue. And those are the ones where it makes sense to put on shelf. Listen, if a retailer wants to launch you on 2 shelves and you have all the inventory, like that's a great opportunity. But at the same time, my goodness, as a small brand, the amount of support that you have to put to each one of those SKUs, it's so much. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew. You really want to take this in a way where you show the retailer that you could really drive revenue and have productivity before you expand deeper and deeper. And to answer your question around the product assortment and the adjacent categories, I worry when a small brand goes into adjacencies too quickly because you're still defining what you're known for. Are you a skincare brand? Are you a personal care brand, a hair care brand? And I know these days people are trying to launch one SKU in a really interesting, fast-growing category because they want to catch a wave of momentum. But you have to remember that as a small brand, you still need to earn the permission to play in those categories. And you're going to be going up against behemoths who have an entire line that's focused on that. So I'm a little bit hesitant to encourage it too quickly because, again, the focus is productivity of your assortment. So
yeah, go deep before you go broad, productivity. And yes, retailers are always going to be pushing for innovation, especially in beauty, especially in color cosmetics, right? They're always asking for innovation. So, you have to really be judicious about rationalizing your product portfolio. Retailers are going to do it for you if you don't, but like make sure you're thinking about what to sunset on yourself before adding new SKUs. I mean, if anything, just for your capital efficiency.
I see a lot of brands too, where it's like that launch it and leave it strategy. And it's a waste. It's very capital intensive to launch a product. Like if you actually think about it from the concept to market, that's years worth of effort to launch something and distraction for your team to be having too many launches per year. And it's very capital intensive if you're going to be buying, inventory, buying stock to support the launch. And then you have to invest in marketing because you want to make sure that sells through. And it just, I would say for a small brand, typically, I know it's going to vary by category, but more than 2 major launches a year is a lot.
Yeah. I mean, these are all,
in my opinion.
Yeah, those are all like great points. I remember like during one of my webinars, I had on an investor that he was saying how like one of his brands launched a Target, nationwide, and it was a big deal, and it was great, but they didn't do anything. They launched and they just sat on it, and he was kind of venting a little bit on it. Didn't name the brand, but he was kind of venting on it. He's like, they just thought it would just like sell itself, and they weren't like, all these kind of areas about product launches and what have you. Like they just didn't focus on it, sat on it, and then I don't think they're out of Target at that point, but I don't think it was going kind of like too well at that point in time. Hopefully things picked up, but yeah, no, I think these are all great questions. And I also think too, just in terms of like, attention, and people's attention, like it's so hard to become known for one thing, right? It's so hard to just become, so if you want to launch like a variety of products and go in different categories, like That's really admirable. I also just think that, become known for one thing. Like K18, it seems like it was a hair mask, right? So like become known for one thing. It's so hard to even become known for one thing. So really try to just focus on that. And then once you kind of have the customer in the door, then okay, here are other products. But really, I do like that advice in terms of really going deep. So I want to also talk about a little bit about margins. And what because I think we talk about wholesale a lot. And I would say probably if you're a successful beauty personal care brand, probably like the majority of your sales are going to come through wholesale as opposed to online D2C. So you kind of have to have wholesale kind of baked into your margins, or really be thinking about that maybe from the beginning. I know I've talked to investors and they say that, there's a couple of brands that they really like that are great, but in terms of their margins actually aren't nearly as good, and actually don't make sense for wholesale. So they were kind of out. How and it maybe like benchmarks, if it's possible, in terms of what the margin kind of, and it's really hard. Also, I'll just comment that once you kind of price your product, it's really hard to then increase your price. It's easy to decrease it, but hard to increase your price if you're doing really well. How should brands think about price and margin that actually makes sense? And so a lot of them typically, it seems like the norm starting off D2C, and then transitioning into wholesale if they decide to go into wholesale. Maybe Odile, we'll start with you. Okay, Cristina, go for it. Go for it.
No, I mean, I'll just, you got to price your strategy first and foremost, and we talked about your positioning, your target consumer, your channel. Who do you want to sell to and where? And that has to be, front and center. At the same time, if you are trying to launch a specific formulation that's incredibly unique and has all these juicy ingredients and whatnot, that's going to be quite expensive. So you have to realize that in order to make a good margin, you are going to have to price at a certain level. Does that jive with your channel strategy? So there's so many components to this. I'll say that as an early stage investor, when I see a brand that does not have the right margin profile to take it into wholesale, it's not something that we would commit to, because there is so much work that goes into reverse engineering and getting back to that right margin, because it will require either changing formulations or, as you said, Mike, changing your price. And then it might not fit your strategy. And that's just not something that we would want to do at this early stage.
Yeah, when I work with first-time founders, especially, right, they have a proclivity of building the best widget. First of all, sometimes you don't need it to be that good, but oftentimes margin comes at that expense. So I often tell founders, like, this, right or wrong, build your financial model first. I mean, you need it anyways for so many reasons, but like flesh out your COGS targets and your SRP and play with things. Of course, make sure it matches with your brand positioning, like Cristina mentioned, but like flesh it all out just to see how everything looks. Theoretical model, right? Pro forma. But also, as a cheat to that, and again, anyone feel free to disagree with me. I don't know if this is like a bad habit I picked up along the way in product development, but there's this adage, I guess, where like if your COGS are roughly 10% of your SRP, then that hopefully when you do flesh out your pro forma, your P&L, it all kind of like works out for wholesale. I don't know if that's true or not, but in my
it'll vary by category, but it's a good target.
Yeah, in my for formula fill especially, like that's been kind of my little cheat, and I don't know. Yeah, curious what you guys have to say.
I will just add to what has been said, the margin per category, because I have got many times the questions by founders. For me, on skincare, if you're under 75%, you're not that good, especially when you will have to share the product margin to have sets and things like that. Again, if one day you have a merger acquisition and a corporation is acquiring your beautiful brand and community, it's for them a virtuous circle. If they purchase a company in the portfolio, they don't want to decrease the product margins average of their portfolio. So you need to be virtuous in the circle. So there were questions in the chat about makeup. Makeup is a tough category because you rarely are above 65%. So 65%, and then you will have a lot of cost in merchandising and sampling and things like that. Fragrance is a beautiful category because especially if you've got great products. The other day, Cristina was giving the example of long lastingness that is super important for Gen Z and millennials. If you've got loyal customers and a good margin, it can be even 85%, 80%. So keep that in mind. And hair care is more like skincare.
I also want to add one thing. Make sure it's clear how you're defining your gross margin, because sometimes I think people confuse it with the product margin, which is just like the actual cost of the goods, including freight in. And that needs to be very high because the way, if you put it fully loaded with your shipping costs, especially if you're a DTC business, like shipping could be incredibly expensive. And if you have heavier products like shampoo and conditioner and whatnot. And then your other fulfillment costs, like I look at it fully loaded with all of that, not just the product cost. So you have to keep that in mind.
And I guess with that 10% kind of Vanessa, is that fully loaded on yours or no?
Product gross margin. Yeah. It's
Okay,
in warehouse.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Well, speaking about, I know we haven't really covered as much on the trend side of things. So we kind of have a question here on that. What are some examples of unmet needs? Is it purely functional, or perhaps there's an unmet need in branding? I'm thinking about brands like Mod, where the product itself is not particularly revolutionary. Sorry, I guess you're a little bit on the hot sheet there, Cristina, since you're an investor in Mod. But how do you all think about this in terms of like unmet needs per se?
I will say there is one that is emotional and one that is rational, coming back to what has been said before. Emotional, it's the brand and the community. Rational, you need to fix a problem, whether acne, curly hair, dark skin, whatever. But you need to be good at fixing the problem.
Yeah. I mean, and just use the Mod example. I mean, there was an explosion of sexual wellness brands, and we looked at many of them, and Mod was the only one that was trying to do something different in terms of they're trying to approach not just sexual wellness, but modern intimacy and what that means and how that could apply to multiple different categories in a way that's never really been done before. And they do that with the elevated product, and the brand experience and the articulation of the brand across all of its channels is very cohesive. And they make it, okay to talk about some of these taboo topics, in addition to having really good product, maybe not groundbreaking in terms of never been done before, but their approach is very unique. So that's what interested us on that one. And, we're huge fans of it.
Cool. I don't know if Vanessa, you have anything to add as well?
Nothing to add. I mean, maybe just to say, like earlier when we were talking about how sometimes it's a packaging of some elements and being among the first to occupy that space, among the first, that's very intriguing. So yeah, I'd say Mod is that.
Cool. This is great. I think that I'm just trying to think. I think that we got most of these questions, and I think that I know that we're almost out of time here. We have this one question here from Henry too, that maybe can going back to our earlier conversation about I guess science and science-led brands. You're mentioning the science ingredient-led importance for beauty brands. In this light, are we going to see a shift from influencer marketing and instead see brands using subject matter experts as brand advocates for credibility purposes, i.e. dermatologists being leveraged for skincare products? I guess, will there be a bit of a shift when it comes to who is the actual right, influencer or maybe person that's maybe promoting your brand itself? Are brands going to be thinking about a different type of profile? Maybe Vanessa, we'll start with you on this.
Yeah, good question. I mean, I'm still thinking through my answer, but ultimately, I think it doesn't really matter who that person of authority or credibility is. It just has to be authentic to the brand. And I know that that's a very commonly used and very vague term still, but I think that's just more important. It has to be kind of organic. Yeah, I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you've
also
seen an
go for it.
explosion of, you think you have seen an explosion of derm focused brands, and you had a prior wave probably 10 or 15 years ago. And now you see it really through social media in particular, and Derm Talk and all of that has really allowed dermatologists to become influencers, to become celebrities in their own right, and to be able to share information on a broader platform outside of just their offices. The question for me is always, you may have the credibility, you may have the, fancy, derm office in LA, the product piece, why you went into developing this product, what is unique about this product, and can you actually build a brand around it, whether it's eponymous or not, and where could you distribute this? You still have to answer all those questions for me. The hurdle doesn't come down because you have the credibility of having kind of a medical background. You still have to be able to build something that goes beyond the derm person, that person itself.
Just adding to that, I know we are running out of time and we didn't have time to cover metrics, but retention rate, if you're at 40%, you're the winner. If you're at 30%, you're good. Under, you need to improve and focus again on your iconic products.
No, this is great. This is terrific. I would just comment on this question. Like, I don't think that it's also like an either or either. Like you can maybe have someone who is big in a big dermatologist, for example, be an influencer, but you could also if you wanted to have more of a traditional influencer as well, be part of it. Like, I don't think it's like an either or scenario when it comes to who actually you want to be like your advocate for the brand. I think to Vanessa and Christina's point, like it just needs to be very authentic and actually make sense in terms of why you actually have those people as part of your brands, and really actually love your brand.
And I think to tie it back to what Cristina and Odile said earlier, it comes also down to community. Like, ultimately, you're trying to build a community. So whoever, it could even be like a community leader, micro, within that world. So it's, I think it's more about the community and you're building, and if it makes sense to leverage these other, third-party credibility people as part of that community building, I think that's really where it works.
Thank you for all the questions. I'm super impressed by the engagement of the audience.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is incredible. I don't think that we didn't cover the last ones about IPOs and more things about IPOs, but honestly, we're out of time, unfortunately. We'll have to do it again. Honestly, this was so much fun. Odile, Vanessa, Cristina, thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you.
This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure. And ladies, I'll see you soon on Mike.
You soon.
I'll see you in Austin at the South by Southwest.
Let's do it. That sounds great. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Good everyone. Okay, bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this webinar and want to hear it again, or replay a part that you missed, you can find recasts of all of our webinars and podcasts on our YouTube channel and on our website. Be sure to like and subscribe to get alerts whenever there's new content available.